Well, hi. This is a bit of an awkward one. This is my first film review. Well, it's not my first one. This is going to be the first one that's online, so that's kind of cool. My name's Michael. I'm Scottish. I live in South Carolina. That's America for everybody who's not American. Yeah, I do short films. I take pictures. I'm that kind of guy, and I thought it'd be fun just to do a couple quick film reviews of stuff I've seen. I've been wanting to do it for a while. Yeah, let's get started. Friday night I saw Zero Dark 30. Catherine Bigelow directed this one. Pretty good overall. I mean, there was a couple things here and there that I felt that could have been inserted, but at the same time I felt there was a lot of subject material, so I can understand why it was left out. But we'll get into details with that. But first impression was the audio. The audio struck me as the big one. Immersive is probably the word you'd use for it, because, whoa, I'll just drop my iPad. One thing that you'd notice straight off is, instead of like a sort of professional studio sound, let the room speak for themselves. So instead of everything sounding like you're talking straight into the mic, there was echoes and there was just the sort of on-location feel to a lot of the audio, which at first took me a second to get used to, but it definitely worked for the film. For the film? Is that what it worked for? The film. So a lot of credit goes to Ray Beckett, who was the production sound mixer. He did a very good job this time. Catherine Bigelow choosing to go that route, it impressed me. Now, of course, with Catherine Bigelow being this serious filmmaker, I mean, she's got K-19, Hurt Locker to her name, you would expect that sort of sense of reality in her work, and it definitely comes across. Now, points go to Greg Fraser, who was heading up the cinematography. Although there wasn't much in the way of a sort of shallow depth of field or even the way of detail shots, just the composition and the framing was excellent. It always told a story that needed to be told. The action, although not brutal, was certainly enough to make you feel uncomfortable. The scenes with the waterboarding certainly made you sort of step back and really think about what was going on. Of course, that was a big thing in the USA when President Obama decided to outlaw that sort of practice, and that's even mentioned in the film. Also, during the final sequence through the house invasion, it's not brutal, there's nobody taking pleasure in what's going on, so there's certainly a sense of respectability in that, that the filmmakers took with that. It's enough to make you feel uncomfortable, just the efficiency with the way these people were dealt with. I mean, when one of the members of the household was on the floor and already was shot, they would just take another 2 or 3 rounds just to put him down. And although I understand why it was done, and that is how it's actually done in the field, it was just enough to make you sort of cringe a little bit, which is probably a good thing. I mean, you don't exactly want to be glorifying violence. I think that was a good thing that they included. Although it did make you feel uncomfortable, I think that was an uncomfortable feeling that needed to be there. If this was going to be a film where it was sort of like, America, yes, we killed them, right, that would have been distasteful and it wouldn't have worked. And this way they dealt with the source material respectively. Now, one thing that would have interested me, and I would like to see a little bit more of included, would have been maybe a little bit more of the sort of international pressures and details coming through. But of course, America wasn't the only country looking for bin Laden. I mean, there had been jihadist attacks all around the world. Now, although there was a couple of different Middle Eastern attacks, of course, bombings in the hotels and even the London bombings mentioned, I might have liked to see a little bit about maybe the Russian massacres or the Madrid bombings. I mean, you had 200 plus people die in that, and there wasn't a tip to the hat. So I would have maybe liked to see a little bit of that and maybe talk about NATO. I mean, I'm not talking a lot of detail, but just something in the background, just to included it. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that it was following the central character and her journey to try and find bin Laden. So I understand why it was kind of put off to the side, but just coming from an outsider's perspective, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more included there. Now, when we're talking about things we might have liked to have seen included, but we can understand why it was left out, our main character, Maya, talks about at one point how the jihadists aren't motivated by sort of capitalist love for the money. So it wasn't going to be a case of you could simply bribe these guys to tell you what you wanted. I'd have liked to maybe seen a little bit of a discussion in the film about, well, what is it that motivates these guys? Now, I understand there's 110 different answers to that question. Of course, it varies from individual people. But I would like to maybe see some of the options there, whether it was just political motivation, if it was something to do with faith, as some people suggested, or if it was actually a response to the US and NATO invasion of the Middle East. Maybe just a little bit there, just to fill it out, because your main character, Maya, she isn't going to be in the position of trying to understand jihadists and hunt them down if you don't understand the psychology behind them. And that would have been fun to see, but again, it's all about her rather than the story of the insurgents. So again, I understand why it was sort of put off to the side. One last thing I might have liked to see a little bit more of might have actually been bin Laden, because you don't actually see much of the man himself, even at the very end. Now again, I understand not wanting to make a martyr of a man who had done such terrible things, but to maybe have seen something in the TV behind him at one point well, not behind Bin Laden, but behind one of the other characters, would have maybe been interesting to see one of the videos that he released in the early 2000s. And we could talk about how this man is obviously throwing out information, but we still can't find him. That, I think, would have maybe added a little bit of extra pressure at times. And those have been discussions that have been interesting to see. The amount of material that he did include, I understand why so much of it was left out. Now, let's move away from what I would have liked to see and what was in it and what was just brilliant. Now, the title 0 Dark 30 is taken from the military terminology, which is actually 0 Dark 30 for an operation that's specifically not done at a particular time, but in the evening when it's dark, which I thought was very interesting. But if you look at one spot just before the two stealth helicopters take off, in the top right hand side of the screen you see a clock, and it's not even particularly focused on, but it says 0:30. And I thought that was just a nice sort of tip to the hat, and not only does it tell you when it's happening, but it's a nod to the screen title, and it's not quite as in your face as do you believe in The Matrix, or something just big and ominous. So I like seeing that sort of subtle nod to itself, which was nice. Now, I'm a big guy for when it comes to being on location and getting rid of any CGI, and the settings and the locations they used for this, perfect. They did a brilliant job, from choosing their houses, their streets, the marketplaces. I mean, they really tried to show off life in the Middle East and what it was to try and work through the culture and rely on the people within the nations to achieve their goals, which I thought was brilliant. And they really showed that. It wasn't just a case of, you know, James Bond or Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible wearing a silly mask somewhere and trying to hunt people down. I mean, this has really showed like the big international effort that went behind finding Bin Laden, and that was a great thing. Now, I have to say, when I first went into the theatre, I was almost a little bit nervous of this film, because at the very beginning it was all the sort of Fast and Furious type trailers, and as you know, the trailers tend to pander to the audience that they think they're going to work for. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, I'm not too sure this is going to be great, because of course you've got the big Mark Wahlberg punching a guy and being a policeman, and you've got Russell Crowe doing this and that, and I was worried that this wasn't going to be an intelligent film. That was dispelled almost immediately. There was nothing that was overly dramatic, and the pacing was excellent. When it came to action sequences, it wasn't anything that was just like massive, blown out or drawn out or anything like that. Everything was depicted realistically. It happened pretty much in real time. There was no giant slow-mo sequences where you could see the beads of sweat dropping off people's faces. It feels real, and that's what you really want from this. You don't want it to be a dramatization. This is a real film about something that happened, and that's just great. Now, if you're going to go out and see this, please bear in mind there's going to be some language there. One scene of very brief nudity during a torture scene. It's nothing sexual. You know, overall, if you can work past that, it's a great film. They did a good job. Everything was done respectfully and tastefully, and hats off to Catherine Bigelow for that one. Good job. But anyway, guys, I'd love for you guys to post responses. Tell me what you think. Tell me not only what you think of the film itself, but what you thought of the review. I mean, I've never done a film review before, so I'd love to get your review of my review. So what would you like to see in future reviews? I've said reviews a lot, haven't I? But, you know, it's a review, so we'll talk about reviews. But let me know what you think should be in the following vlogs about the movies. If there's any movies you would like to see me review, I might not even stick to just stuff that's out in the cinema. I've got a Blu-ray collection, I've got a DVD collection. I watch TV shows. I don't think I'll review those, I'm kind of lazy. But yeah, let me know if there's anything you want to see reviewed by me, and love you all. Catch you later.